The 13th of July 2023, you're very welcome back to Real True Education, not fake news. Promissory estoppel. Now folks, you're not my client, I'm not your lawyer. I can only give my opinion on the law and I can't be held accountable for its use or what happens. All I can do is give a rough idea, because somebody posted on one of my videos, why don't I deal with this problem about changing the law or changing contracts, changing deals. What happens if you want to get rid of one particular law and you want to put in another one? What are the implications? Well, there's a thing called promissory estoppel. Promissory estoppel, meaning a promise which you're stopped from breaking. Now, what it means is that in common law, in Ireland, England, and many states in America, Australia, and New Zealand, mostly where the British tramped around, and not go into other countries, but each state and country has slightly different laws. But a person who makes a promise, or a company that makes a promise, is prevented from going back on that promise. They're prevented. So an example would be given of a person who lives in Letterkenny in Donegal in Ireland, and they are in a job, let's say working as a caretaker in a school, and they're offered a job in Waterford, and they sell up their house and all, and the Waterford company says, we'll pay you such a price, the job is there, on saving, everything goes well, we're not going to sack you for, we'd say, a year and a half to give you time to settle in, and hopefully you do well, and we're delighted to see you coming. So he sells up and moves his family and moves all down to Waterford and buys a house down there and all. And when he goes down, he discovers the job is either gone through no fault of his and was never actually only a promise, or it's not paying the same, or he's not doing the work he was doing in Donegal, or it's different in many ways in that way. And that's a classic case where he can sue to stop the company or the individual from reneging on his promise. Now, the question arises with laws that's passed. How can the government change laws? Well, there used to be a section in the Planning and Development Act where if you were refused planning permission, you could sue. They changed that a bit. But usually, if a law exists, they can take it away. It's not a promise. A law is not a promise. But if they promise a law, enact a law, and then somebody acts on it, you might have a possibility of claiming damages from the state. So, for example, if the state said it's bringing in laws that all cars will be electric by a certain date, and no petrol or diesel cars will be allowed to be imported in the state, and they pass legislation to that effect, and it comes then to the time that's supposed to happen and nothing has happened. But if you are not damaged by it, or if you just don't get damaged, it doesn't mean much. But supposing that you set up a garage in about halfway through the period, we'd say 2027, and you're dealing only in electric cars, and you invest heavily, and when the day comes you discover that there is no laws not being enforced, well, then you might be entitled to some compensation. Now, it's not as easy with law, but it's certainly easy enough with contract. Now, in Ireland, the person affected must suffer, or in England too, must suffer some financial or other disadvantage. You must lose out. And a classic case was decided, went to the courts up and down, was where there was a promise of a marquee, a promise of a big festival day, and for some reason it was cancelled. And this guy had a big food marquee, and he was allowed to come in, but he was not booked or hired by the company. And in that case, he had no comeback when the thing was cancelled. He had all his hot dogs and his burgers all there, and he couldn't get. There was no event. So it has to be, if the company had hired him and told him, or given permission and told him, we want you to supply this stuff, then he might have a comeback for some compensation. You understand? So that's promissory estoppel. And it used to work in Ireland with relationships. It was known long ago that a couple would be going out, he'd ask her to marry him, or she'd, whatever, there'd be arrangements to get married, and she acted on it or made plans, and then he pulled out. she could sue for breach of promise. And that happened several places. That happened several places. And so it was done away with. It was regarded as a bit of a cod. It was unenforceable. So it's gone in that case. Now there has to be a serious contract made. Word of mouth will do. Word of mouth will do. Now, in my opinion, where a person gets a bit drunk and tells somebody in the pub he'll sell the farm in front of two witnesses, he give him the farm for 100,000 and then reneges on it, that doesn't apply. Because apart from the drink and all that, land must be transacted in paper. Land must be a paper transaction. But if he says, I'll sell you the tractor, shake on it there, and your man gives him a little earnest of £100, I'll buy the tractor at that price, and then your man says, no, you're not getting the tractor, then he might have a case for breach of contract in that case. Now, it's not as simple with legal changes, but certainly where somebody would set up some facility to deal with a particular enactment by the government, and that should change, they might have a claim. And if you get abortion, if you have abortion, and somebody sets up a big abortion clinic in London, or in Dublin, or in London, and suddenly the law changes to ban abortion, they might be able to put in a claim on the grounds that they had reasonable grounds to believe this was going to continue. However, the right of the people would come in, and this would go to a lot of ups and downs before that would happen. Okay. The other thing is, if you had a quarry beside you and it was running for years, and you decided to set up some type of a canteen there, and it was going well, and suddenly the canteen, the quarry closes down, in that case they made you no promise, you can't sue. But if they wanted you there, if they had to feed their people and they contracted with you to supply a canteen and for their people and give you a bit of space for it or whatever, then you might have a claim. Just be aware of this concept of breach of contract, of promissory estoppel, and folks, it's not a very thorough thing, but I'll just read you some of the things. One of the points is the promisor made the promise. The promisor must have made the promise with the intention that a reasonable person would act on it. To the promisee believes the promisor and acted on that promise in good faith. So the two parties must reasonably believe each other. The promisor later reneged on that promise, causing financial harm to the promisee. So he reneged, or she reneged on the promise. The nature of the promise is such that the only way to avoid injustice is by enforcing the promise. So if there's some other way of enforcing the injustice caused, it talks about the injustice. So if there's some other way of remedying this situation, the courts will only look into this and only consider it where everything else has been tried. Now, can anyone think of what that might be? Well, I can't offhand. I suppose if the fella with the canteen was allowed to have a canteen in another place, another quarry or something, belonging to the same people, or some effort was made to sort them out, that would be all right. But if there's no promise made between the quarry owner or the industry owner and the canteen at all, if there's no promise, then they would have no say. So Tara Mines is closing down. If there's a canteen up there and it has to close because there's no customers, then they have no comeback. They have no comeback because they'd just be allowed in there at the pleasure of the company, and the company's entitled to make commercial decisions without having to appease and look after everybody and everybody that's all around the place. So I hope that's relatively clear. All right, folks, give me a thumbs up and a thumbs down. And in respect of the hate speech law, yeah, that can be pulled out. Lots of laws are repealed. Lots of laws are repealed. All enactments repeal whatever section that they want to change before that. It's only if the person affected could have relied on it staying there for some particular personal reason and as a result loses, and there's no other way to reasonably enforce it. So it's very tightly interpreted, but it's there. So we'll see you back for something else soon. Goodbye.